Why did the desert feel like it was waiting for her? The pickup truck rolled to a stop in the middle of nowhere, not even a road, just a ribbon of dust and heat. The engine coughed once, like it too was choking on the sun. Then the tailgate dropped. Staff Sergeant Maya Torres hit the ground hard, face in the sand, wrists zip-tied behind her back, throat dry as the cracked earth around her. The laughter came next. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Cruelty rarely raises its voice. Cartel Lieutenant Rafael Vargas leaned over her, boots sinking into the dune. "You Delta Force," he said, his accent thick, amused. "Always so tough. Let's see how tough you are without water." He tossed 2 plastic bottles into the sand, both landing just out of reach. His men laughed again, a harsh, echoing sound that the desert swallowed whole. When they drove away, the silence stayed. The kind of silence that hums in your ears until you realize it's the sound of your own heartbeat. The Sonoran sun hammered down, 116 degrees and climbing. The air shimmered like glass. The smell of burnt oil and dust clung to her uniform until even breathing hurt. But Maya said nothing. She marked the sun's angle, counted seconds between gusts, mapped distance by memory. Training over fear, silence over weakness. Before the desert, before all this, she'd been something else. Tucson, Arizona. A town where summer heat bleached color out of everything, pavement, paint, even patience. Her father, Miguel Torres, was a retired Army Ranger. The kind of man who didn't shout to command a room, he just stood, and the air seemed to listen. He used to wake her before dawn to watch the sunrise crest the Catalina Mountains. He'd tell her, "The desert doesn't care how tough you think you are, kid. It teaches you how to be tough." He never raised his voice. He didn't have to. Her mother died when Maya was 11. From that day forward, the house grew quieter, not from grief, but from determination. It was her father, and Lena, a younger sister with sketchbooks full of stars and a heart too gentle for the world they lived in. Maya worked through high school, gas station clerk by day, volunteer EMT by night. Not for money, for control. When she saw blood, she didn't flinch. When sirens wailed, she drove faster, not from adrenaline, from purpose. At 19, she walked into the recruitment office with a backpack and a steady gaze. "Family in the service?" the sergeant behind the desk asked. She nodded. "Rangers," she said. He smirked. "Then you already know what kind of pain you're signing up for." Basic training didn't surprise her. The noise, the exhaustion, the chaos, it all blurred into white heat and repetition. When others shouted, she listened. When they raced, she carried extra gear. When they talked about quitting, she didn't talk at all. The drill instructors used to say, "Torres doesn't break. She waits for everyone else to." By 21, she volunteered for airborne school. The instructors laughed when they saw her, 5'6", small frame, quiet voice. Not what they expected from a paratrooper candidate. "Lightweight," one of them called out. She looked him in the eye and said simply, "Yes, Sergeant." By the end of week 1, she was running extra jumps to help other trainees who froze mid-exit. Every time her boots hit the ground, she'd whisper, "One more done." Never celebrated, never complained, just built endurance into a rhythm. That rhythm became her heartbeat. 5 years later, Sergeant Torres had already seen 2 combat tours, Afghanistan, then Iraq. Not as a shooter, but as a communications specialist, the quiet link between chaos and command. Her call sign, Raven. Not because she was mysterious, but because ravens don't get lost. No matter the storm, they find their way back. She wasn't loud, she didn't swagger, but she noticed everything. The tremor in a medic's hands before dawn patrol. The tiny crack in a radio antenna that could have cost them contact. The way a man's silence changes right before fear starts speaking for him. Details were her weapon. Inside her watchband were hand-etched marks, coordinates, Headings, escape azimuths, each one smudged but memorized. She kept a small tuck knife sharpened like ritual. Once a week, same motion, same prayer. Her teammates teased her for folding maps with perfect corners. She just smirked and said, "If you can't fold it right, you can't read it right." Her restraint was what set her apart. When firefights broke out, her voice stayed level. When a Humvee flipped on a desert road, she was the one crawling through the smoke to pull out the driver. But even after years in uniform, she was constantly underestimated. Too small, too quiet, too plain. She never minded. Underestimation was camouflage. And one night in Afghanistan, that quiet almost saved a life. A green recruit, Private Huxley, fumbled with a frequency dial as mortar fire cracked nearby. Static screamed in his headset. Maya crouched beside him, calm as rain. "Hey," she whispered, "breathe first, fix later." He panicked. "What if we lose comms?" She turned the knob 3 clicks right. The channel snapped alive. A pilot's voice cut through. "There," she said, "now we don't lose anything." Later, the lieutenant asked who stabilized the net. Huxley just said, "Raven did." She didn't even look scared. She smiled. Wasn't time to be. Months later, a black envelope came down the chain. No name, no logo, just 3 words: assessment and selection. She packed light, left her sister a voicemail. "Be good, Lena. I'll be back when I can." And disappeared for 4 months. When she returned, her uniform looked the same. No new insignia, no badge. But the ones who'd been through that knew the silence meant everything. From then on, she wasn't Sergeant Torres. She was Raven, the one who never cracked, never bragged, never broke. Years passed, missions changed, but her belief stayed the same. No one is coming to save you, you save each other. That belief was about to be tested. The convoy rolled south into the Sonoran Desert, the kind of land that erases footprints and memories alike. 2 unmarked SUVs in front. A beat-up Tacoma with spare tires and water cans behind. And a dust-caked Land Cruiser carrying Maya in the rear seat. It was supposed to be simple, a quiet cross-border extraction of a kidnapped American advisor. Slip in before noon, slip out before the sky boiled. No heroics, no signatures, just precision. Maya sat in the back seat, headset snug, a grease-stained map balanced on her knee. She traced a penciled line between 2 ridges, a narrow culvert, a cattle gate, then a fork where the road split. 2 minutes to choke point, the driver murmured. Up ahead, smoke bled across the track. At first, it looked like a brush fire. Then the shapes resolved, 3 tires burning in stagger, a rusted sedan angled across the path. "Roadblock," the lead SUV called out. "We go through." "Negative," came the team leader's voice. "We bypass through the wash, slow and smart." Maya's instincts screamed. The hairs on her neck lifted. Burning tires meant one thing: theater. The real threat was always where no one looked. "Pause," she said quietly. "Check the culvert 10 meters short, that dirt's too fresh." The driver braked. Dust rolled past them like surf. Through the windshield she saw it, a patch of road tamped smooth by hand, not by wind. "Back it up," she said softly. They reversed 3 meters. The world exploded. A pressure wave slammed through the convoy. The front SUV lifted, flipping forward like a toy. The windshield burst into glitter. The Tacoma fishtailed, crashing into a mesquite trunk. Maya's head hit the headrest, her radio crackled static. "Contact, contact, front," someone shouted. Then came the gunfire, a long, stitched growl from the right. RPK, maybe PKM, belt-fed, sustained. The roadblock wasn't the ambush. It was the bait. Round snapped past, chewing into sand. Maya rolled from the Land Cruiser and dropped to the dirt. Heat slammed her lungs. "Comms check," she shouted. Hit left arm. Huxley's voice came through, ragged but alive. Stay with me, she ordered. Push to backup net. Encryption might be compromised. Bullets tore into dry grass near her boot. She crawled to cover fast, measured. One look was enough. 10, maybe 12 shooters, 2 trucks. Left berm, 2 gunners with belts. Right wash, 3 rifles, 1 spotter. Left high, right low, she called out. A second blast ripped the sand where their rear tires had been. Not a kill, a trap to pin them in place. Then a new voice over their frequency. American accent, too cheerful, too wrong. U.S. soldiers, it said, drop your weapons, we only want to talk. Her blood went cold. They weren't jamming the signal. They were using it. They stolen a handset. She double-clicked her mic, the silent Delta signal for comms compromised. No response, just static. Raven, the team leader said, crawling beside her, arms soaked in blood. We need out. She scanned fast. Left flank too high, right wash too deep, rear blocked by the Tacoma. Their only chance was forward, through the same hell that pinned them. On me, she said. 3 of them moved, crouched low toward the wash. Bullets snapped overhead. Maya counted the bursts, 3 seconds fire, 4 seconds reload. Timing, always timing. She dropped smoke and followed it down into the wash. Sand cut her palms. The air turned into dust and fire. Then a shape rushed her through the smoke. A man, bandana, short rifle. He saw the small soldier, thought she'd be easy. Her elbow snapped forward, jamming his rifle into his own chest. Her boot found his knee, folding him sideways. She didn't finish him, no time. Who crawl, she ordered. They moved 30 meters, low, desperate. The roar above never stopped. Then the Silverado appeared on the ridge, headlights cutting through dust, muzzles flashing. Back, Maya shouted. A rope dropped from the truck bed. Not rescue, a drag line. Hands yanked it tight around Huxley's leg. He screamed as he was pulled into the open. No, Maya lunged, fingers grazing his pant leg, but she let go. It was the hardest decision she'd ever made. When the gunfire died, she was on her knees, wrists zip-tied, surrounded. They stripped her gear, took her sidearm, her plate carrier, her name tape. A boot nudged her shoulder. Where's your bravery now? Another laughed, holding up her knife like a souvenir. She said nothing. Didn't give them the satisfaction. The Lieutenant Vargas crouched beside her, smiling. You look ordinary, he said. I thought the best were big, muscles like movies. He looked her over, disappointed. Then he said quietly, let's see how long you last in the sun. The next thing she saw was the truck bed. The glare. The bottles tossed into sand, both out of reach. And the sound of laughter fading into nothing. Silence pressed on her until it became a weight. But she wasn't listening to them anymore. She was listening to the wind, to the heat, to the desert. It had taken everything from her, gear, shade, water, but not her memory. And Maya Torres never forgot how to survive. How long can one human last when the world decides they should? The desert answered with silence. Not mercy, not cruelty, just silence. Maya lay half buried in sand, breathing through grit. The truck was gone. The laughter had vanished into heat waves, and for the first time in hours she was alone. She lifted her head slowly, watching the horizon tremble. The sun hung above her like a sentence. Every breath scraped her throat. Her wrists burned under the plastic ties. She didn't move yet. Movement wasted energy. Instead, she did what Delta had drilled into her bones. Observe before you act. Sun position slightly west. Shadows short, peak heat approaching. Nearest elevation, a low draw to the south. Wind direction, east to west. That meant cooler air would flow downslope after dusk. Every detail was a tool, every tool a chance. She rolled onto her back, pressing the plastic cuff against the hottest sand she could find. Heat made plastic brittle. She didn't fight the pain. She timed it, counted seconds. Sweat ran into her eyes. By the 40th count, the cuff softened just enough to flex. Not break, but it was a start. She looked at the bottles lying 6 feet away. One had split open. The other was intact, the label curling under the sun. She crawled inch by inch, dragging her elbows. The sand felt like knives. When she reached it, she bit the cap open and took a single sip. Then another. Then stopped. Control, always control. When she capped the bottle again, her reflection shimmered in the plastic, eyes rimmed with dust, lips cracked, expression calm. She whispered to no one, still here. The first hour was the hardest. The second, the loneliest. By the third, her training began to sound like memory instead of command. In her mind, she heard her father's voice again. The desert doesn't kill you fast. It waits for you to panic. That's how it wins. She smiled, a dry, painful curve. Not today, Dad. Maya began crawling toward the shallow draw that cut across the desert floor like a scar. The sun hammered the top of her skull. Each movement left an imprint of her body in the sand, proof she existed, even if no one could see her. When she reached the first bit of shade, a dying creosote bush, she stopped. The air shimmered. The ground hummed with heat. She pressed her fingers an inch beneath the surface, found it slightly damp. She brought the moisture to her tongue, metallic, bitter, but alive. That small taste told her something more important than water: direction. Moisture meant the water table leaned east. Civilization, maybe miles away, leaned with it. As the hours crawled by, she thought of Lena, the little sister who had once begged her not to enlist. "You don't need to prove anything," Lena had said. Maya had smiled back. "It's not about proving, it's about belonging." Now, under a sun that could melt steel, belonging felt far away. She pulled her knees under her and looked east. The mountains shimmered in the distance like ghosts. Between them and her lay 80 kilometers of emptiness. 80 kilometers of nothing but dust, thirst, and maybe death. She didn't let the number scare her. She broke it into pieces, the way you break fear into tasks. Survive till dusk. Move at night. Find direction by the stars. That was all. Nothing else existed. When the wind shifted, she knew the cartel convoy had turned back toward its compound. She heard it faintly, the far-off growl of engines, then nothing. She exhaled once and whispered, "They think I'm done." The words steadied her heartbeat. She leaned her cheek to the sand and listened, truly listened. Wind against dune, insects beneath surface, distant crows, every sound painted a map. She wasn't lost, she was surrounded by information. With her chin, she brushed away sand from a sharp quartz shard half buried near her elbow. A small miracle. She angled it under her wrist and began sawing. Each pull was a whisper, each whisper a defiance. By the time the sky began to fade from white to copper, the tie gave a dry pop. Her wrist sprang free, skin raw but unbroken. Freedom didn't taste like victory. It tasted like dust. Still, she flexed her fingers and whispered again, "Still here." Dusk in the Sonoran Desert isn't quiet, it transforms. The heat bleeds out of the ground in slow waves. Air cools until it bites. The horizon darkens from gold to bruised violet. Coyotes begin to call. Maya used those sounds like a clock. When the first call echoed, she started walking. Her steps were careful, measured. Every few paces she stopped and crouched, scanning for movement. Shadows stretched long. The first stars began to appear, faint, uncertain. She followed the dip of land toward what she hoped was a dry riverbed. Every hour she checked her bearings by constellations. The Big Dipper low and bright, Polaris steady. North was memory, east was hope. At one point she stopped, half dazed with exhaustion, and pulled a small folded paper from her pocket. A photograph. Lena at her high school graduation, flower in her hair, smile unbroken. Maya touched the picture gently. "You still waiting for me?" The photo trembled in the night breeze. She refolded it, tucked it against her heart. That was the only reason she needed to keep moving. By midnight, the desert turned cruel again, cold enough to sting the inside of her nose with each breath. Her freed wrists glowed pale against the stars. She huddled into a wash, using the slope to block wind. Sleep wasn't an option. She didn't trust the ground not to shift under her. She closed her eyes only long enough to slow her heartbeat. When she opened them again, a faint flicker pulsed on the horizon, orange, rhythmic. A campfire. The compound. 80 kilometers away. The men who'd left her to die were laughing again. She memorized the direction, east by southeast. And in that moment, she made a decision that wasn't born of rage or revenge, just purpose. She wasn't running away from them. She was going back. Not for pride. For Huxley. If he was still alive, she wouldn't leave him behind. Morning came like punishment. The heat returned fast, burning through her clothes. Her lips bled where they cracked. She moved slower now, every step measured through shimmering mirage. When she found a patch of compacted sand, darker, harder, she knelt. That meant water had once run here. Maybe it still left dew. She pressed her bandaged wrist into the dirt and felt a thin film of moisture cling. She tasted it, still bitter, still enough. A small mercy. She crouched beneath a mesquite, tore a strip from her sleeve, and wrapped it around her face to trap any breath-borne humidity. It was a trick from survival school. It bought her maybe an hour, maybe less. But in the desert, an hour was the difference between surrender and strategy. Just before noon, an engine sound cracked the horizon again, higher-pitched, irregular. Dirt bikes. She dropped flat into the wash. 2 riders crested the ridge, weaving lazy patterns, scanning half-heartedly. They were young, laughing, probably bored guards sent to check the dump site. Their conversation floated across the heat like ghosts of words. "She's bones by now. Maybe the vultures got her." Or she crawled into the sand. They stopped near the same truck that had abandoned her. One jumped down into the bed, kicking through debris. Something metallic clanged, heavy, hollow. A radio. Maya froze. Her pulse surged, then leveled. She waited as the riders cursed, gave up, and throttled their engines again. Dust swallowed them as they disappeared over the rise. When the last echo faded, she moved. Elbows, knees, slow as prayer. She reached the truck, brushed away sand, and found it dented casing, cracked antenna, but the power light flickered red when she toggled the switch. Static whispered, "Alive." Her throat tightened. She turned the knob, searching for signal. Nothing, just hiss and wind. No matter, she didn't need to talk, she needed to signal. Using a triangle of rusted chrome from the fender, she tapped on the radio casing, twice, pause, 3 quick taps, then one long scrape. Tap, 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 scrape. To anyone else, noise. To anyone who had ever worn her patch, it was code. Delta Sear short-range beacon, alive, eastbound, tracking. She repeated it 3 times, then sat still. Miles away, maybe across the border, someone might catch it, maybe no one. But she had spoken into the silence. And sometimes, that's all survival is, refusing to be erased. She spent the rest of the day building shade. The truck's half-buried tailgate became a lean-to. She angled it toward the wind and lined the base with scraps of tarp and reeds. Inside, the temperature dropped 10 degrees, barely enough to think again. She studied the landscape. From this hollow she could see faint smoke in the east, the cartel base, and closer, a pattern of tire tracks leading northeast. She memorized tread marks, direction, pattern, spacing. Every line in the sand told a story, and she read it like scripture. When the light began to fade, she gathered her tools, the radio, the shard, the single bottle now half empty. She pressed her forehead to the fender and whispered, "You'll get me there." Then she began walking again. The desert stretched infinite and merciless, but it couldn't outweigh her. She had learned that as a child, how to breathe through heat, how to listen through silence, how to outstubborn death itself. And though her lips were cracked and her vision swam, a single phrase pulsed in her mind like heartbeat. "No one is coming to save you. You save each other." That was what she'd taught her team. That was what she'd live by now. By the time night returned, the stars were sharp as glass. She followed their light east, step by deliberate step, until the compound glow became more than mirage. Somewhere inside those walls, a soldier waited, hurt, maybe dying but breathing because she'd once told him to. Maya tightened the cloth around her wrists and whispered into the dark, "Hold on, Hux, I'm coming." What happens when survival becomes more than staying alive, when it becomes a mission? The desert didn't sleep. It shifted. Every breath of wind rearranged dunes, erased footprints, covered sins. Maya used that. She moved under moonlight, deliberate, patient, a ghost among bones. Each step was a calculation. Heel, then toe, pressed into softer sand where wind had already brushed the surface smooth. She wasn't invisible, but she knew how to act invisible, how to think like the terrain, how to blend not by color but by stillness. Above her the stars burned white and cold. The Big Dipper had drifted west. That meant she'd been walking almost 6 hours straight. Her legs ached, but pain wasn't her concern anymore. Time was. Every hour she stayed out here, Huxley's odds shrank. She tightened her jaw. Not again, she thought, not another name to carry home. When the compound came into view, it was just a cluster of heat shimmer and faint orange glow. A crude fortress stitched together from old oil drums, concrete and chain link. From a distance it looked harmless. Up close it was hell with generators. Maya crouched behind a ridge of sandstone and watched. Binoculars gone, she used the next best thing, her hands cupped to focus the light. 3 trucks. 2 guards by the main gate, half awake. A perimeter light that rotated on a squeaky hinge every 40 seconds. She timed its arc, ticked off in her head. 1, 2, 3, squeak. Perfect, predictable. She scanned farther. A low structure to the left, roof sagging, sleeping quarters. A metal shed at the back with an exhaust pipe and a faint blue flicker, generator house. But what caught her attention wasn't the lights. It was the sound. Someone screaming. Not loud, not desperate, but hoarse. Broken rhythm, broken will. Huxley. Her throat tightened. She bit the inside of her cheek to stay silent. The taste of blood grounded her. She'd found him. It took her nearly an hour to circle downwind of the camp. She stayed in the shadows of abandoned machinery, rusted fuel barrels, a derelict bulldozer half swallowed by sand. At one point, a guard walked within 15 feet of her position, flicking ash from his cigarette. Maya froze, body flat, heart steady. The embers' glow reflected in his eyes for a moment, then turned away. She let out a slow breath, only when his boots faded into the hum of a generator. In Delta, they called that the heartbeat window. The moment when every instinct screams to move, and you don't. You stay, you breathe, you wait. That was how professionals lived when luck ran out. She crawled closer to the shed. The hum of machinery grew louder, masking her movements. The air smelled of diesel and sweat. She found a vent at knee level, too small to enter but wide enough to see through. Inside, a single bulb swung above Huxley. He was tied to a chair, arms swollen, face bloodied, but his eyes were open, blinking. Alive. Maya's breath caught, relief and anger mixed like acid. She wanted to rush in. She wanted to burn this place to ash. But emotion kills strategy, and she still had no weapon, no comms, no backup. So she waited, thinking. The generator, loud enough to cover her approach. The guards' lazy rotation, one every few minutes. The structure, thin metal, rusted joints. Weak points everywhere. Her plan formed not like a revelation, but like instinct remembering itself. She whispered, "All right, Hux, hold on." Before moving, she needed tools. She backtracked 50 yards to a supply area littered with scrap. Among it, she found what she needed: an old steel bracket, half a wrench, and a frayed cable. To anyone else, trash. To her, a weapon. She twisted the bracket into a crude handle, bent the cable through it, tightened the wrench head to weight one side, makeshift garrote. Quiet. Lethal. When it was done, she tested the balance once, catching the cold metal in her hand. Delta Force training wasn't about firepower. It was about making something from nothing. Now she had something. The first guard went down fast. He was leaning against a post, checking his phone, his silhouette clean against the floodlight glow. Maya stepped behind him, used the hum of the generator as cover, looped the cable around his throat, pulled back until his weight folded against her shoulder. No noise, no struggle, just a slow collapse. She eased him down gently, eyes open, staring at stars he'd never see again. The second guard was harder. He came around the corner just as she dragged the body behind the barrels. For half a heartbeat, their eyes met. He opened his mouth, but not fast enough. The wrench head cracked across his jaw. Bone gave way with a dull snap. He staggered once. She finished it quick. Then silence again. She stripped one of their sidearms, a compact 9, half-empty magazine, and took 2 flashbangs from the first guard's belt. Not much, but enough to start a storm. She crouched by the vent again and waited for the pattern. When the light swung away, she moved. 3 steps. Kneel. Cut the padlock. Open the shed. Huxley's head lifted as the door creaked. His eyes widened in disbelief. Maya. She pressed a finger to her lips, quiet. He tried to speak again, but she shook her head. She cut his wrist ties. The rope burned her hands, but she didn't care. "You're supposed to be dead," she whispered. "Not today." His breath hitched. He looked ready to collapse. She steadied him. "Can you move?" He nodded, but it was a lie. His legs buckled. She eased him down. "We've got 1 shot," she murmured. "When the light hits that corner, we move for the dunes." He looked at her, disbelief mixed with something deeper. "You came back for me." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The light swung. They moved. Every second felt like eternity measured in heartbeats. They made it halfway to the barrels before the night split open with shouting. Someone had found the bodies. Maya spun, fired twice, not to kill but to scatter. The bullets cracked concrete, sparked steel. Huxley dropped flat, crawling for cover. "Go," she shouted. Bullets answered her, slicing the air inches from her face. She rolled behind the bulldozer, slammed a flashbang against the ground, counted 2 seconds, and threw it blind. White light tore the night apart. Screams, confusion. She hauled Huxley up and they ran, stumbling, crawling, running again. The dunes swallowed them. Behind them, the compound erupted, shouts, gunfire, searchlights cutting arcs through dust. They fell into a ravine, panting. Huxley clutched his side, bleeding through his shirt. "Keep pressure," she said, tearing a strip from her sleeve. "You lose consciousness, I'll drag you. Don't make me drag you." He tried to laugh, coughed instead. "Copy that, Sergeant." Hours passed in fragments. They moved when searchlights swung the other way, rested when the noise faded. Maya led them toward higher ground, using ridges and shadows to hide their trail. At dawn, they found an abandoned well, shallow, half-collapsed, but deep enough to hide in. She lowered Huxley first, then climbed down beside him. The air inside was cooler, heavy with the scent of old earth. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe. Huxley looked at her through cracked lips. They'll come looking. They already are. And when they find us, she stared up at the sliver of sky above them. Then they find two people who didn't quit. The silence stretched, the light turned gold. Huxley dozed off. Maya stayed awake listening. Every sound mattered. Her thoughts drifted again, to Lena, to her father, to the quiet mornings before deployment when everything still made sense. She remembered her father's words, "The desert teaches patience before it teaches mercy." Now she understood what he meant. Patience wasn't just waiting, it was enduring. She had endured heat, hunger, fear, and something worse, isolation. But as she watched the sun rise through the gap in the stones, she felt something deeper than exhaustion. Peace. Not comfort, but clarity. If this was where it ended, she would end it on her terms, protecting someone, staying loyal to the only code that mattered. A faint crackle broke the silence. The radio. She pulled it from her belt, thumbed the dial. Static hissed, then a voice thin, buried in white noise. "Raven, this is Falcon. If you're out there, respond." Her breath caught. She keyed the mic twice, tap tap. Silence then. Copy double tap, coordinates. She looked at Huxley, then up at the sky. No map, no compass, but the stars she'd memorized hours earlier still lived behind her eyes. She rattled off a bearing, East Ridge, Twin Peak collapsed well. The voice on the other end paused. "Hold position, Raven. We've got you, dawn plus 30. Maya closed her eyes, exhaling slow. For the first time since the ambush, she allowed herself to believe it rescue. She looked at Huxley, "Told you we weren't done." He smiled weakly. "Delta never dies easy." She smirked, "We don't die at all." As the first helicopter blades began to echo faintly over the horizon, she whispered a silent promise into the dust. "You left me to die, but I learned to live where you can't." The wind carried it away. And in that moment, the desert, brutal, endless, eternal, finally bowed to her endurance. Could the sky really bend in her favor? The dawn was false, a pale promise that flickered at the edges of everything. Maya lay quiet in the rubble well, chest pressed against cold earth, listening to the hum beyond the stone. Her breath came shallow, tight, as though the air itself resisted entry. Light cracked across the ridge, rotor wash. She sat up, supporting Huxley, who winced but shook his head. He tried to push himself upright, only to slump again. She steadied him. "Don't talk yet," she whispered. "Conserve strength." Above, the wind bore a low drone, distant, then nearer, then unmistakable. "Helicopters." She pressed her palm against Huxley's back. Her fingers trembled. "We made it." But the mission wasn't done. She crawled forward, peering through a gap in the jagged rocks. Two black hawks slipped over the ridgeline, blades chopping the air into thunder. Their dark silhouettes glinted in early light. The softer one hovered low, rescue. The other circled, scanning for threats. She keyed the radio. "Falcon, this is Raven. Position confirmed, I'm exposed." Static, then reply, "On your mark, extraction in 2 minutes." 2 minutes felt like hours. She inhaled the dust. She glanced at Huxley, eyes closed, face pale. She steeled herself. A sudden whistle cracked across the ridge. Gunshots. From below. She slammed Huxley down, shielding his face with her forearm. Rifles, automatic fire. They were being pushed. She cursed under her breath. The ambush wasn't over. They'd set a trap around the rescue path. She flicked the safety off the 9 and scanned the walls, the ridge tops. Shadows moved. Falcon contact, multiple hostiles. Raven, hold, we're inbound. 2 gunships engaging. Someone groaned near her, Huxley. She pressed the barrel to his shoulder. "Stay down." Machine guns roared. The ground trembled. Dust exploded overhead. She heard voices command Spanish, English, aggression. She edged toward the opening in the well, weapon first. Her heart pounded. It always did in these moments, calling her alive. The rescue chopper dipped lower. A rope ladder unfolded. But before they could lower, a burst ripped across the sky, tracer rounds dotting the horizon, licking the chopper's flank. The pilot banked hard. The rope ladder retracted. Extraction delayed. Her jaw clenched. She looked at the sky, then at Huxley. It was on her. She climbed up the stones, weapon raised. Shots cracked. She returned fire not to kill but to disrupt. A figure dropped behind a rock. Another peeked out. She took him down. Bullets zipped past. She moved sideways, used rock shadows, forced angles. The roar of helicopters and the crack of rifles merged into a single assaulting chord. A second burst hit the chopper's tail. Sparks, fire. It spun off, limping, chased by death. Raven standing by, Falcon said. Hold as long as you can. We'll get a clean window. She fired again, clearing the path below the ridge. She shouted low, fierce, get down. Huxley tried, pain twisting his face, but he obeyed. She vaulted over rocks, sliding into view, giving enemy shooters targets. One guard aimed at Huxley. She shot first. The guard fell. Another aimed for her. She twisted, took cover, fired reflexively. Blood and sand sprayed. The ridge line glowed with muzzle flashes. She advanced inch by inch, dragging Huxley behind her cover. Somewhere below, a grenade exploded. Dust smothered light. She lost sight for moments, then saw the rope ladder unhinge again. A Delta operator descended. He landed crouched, then sprinted toward them under fire. Another followed. Covering fire erupted. They reached her. Raven's secure package. They strapped Huxley to a litter. She stayed low, shooting suppressive fire beside them. Each breath burned. A hail of shots came from the flank. She twisted, grabbed her makeshift garrote wire, swung at a figure closing in. He dropped. She rejoined the group. They began climbing the ladder. One by one, Huxley carried, then Maya, then the extraction team. She looked down at the bloody landscape she'd crawled, fought, survived in. Part of her wanted to stay, to finish every fight here, to avenge every wound. But a stronger part knew this was a mission of rescue, not death. The last man climbed up. The rope pulled taut. They hovered. Below, the cartel compound erupted into rage. Rockets fired, bullets sprayed upward. The Black Hawks roared overhead and surged forward, leading the way out. Maya strapped herself to the floor. Huxley groaned beside her. She closed her eyes once, took a breath that trembled with relief, with sorrow, with resolve. Somewhere in that fiery descent, she realized the moral weight she carried. She had walked into darkness alone. She had found another in darkness. She had fought to drag him out. But the desert, ruthless, vast, would not grant her absolution so easily. A blast rocked the bird. She clung. She tasted grit in her mouth. Saw the ridgeline fall away. Then dawnlight, rotor wash escape. The compound shrank below. She watched the horizon bleed gold. She held Huxley's hand, fingers weak, palm stained. He looked at her. Sergeant Raven, you saved me. He started to cough. She squeezed his hand. Only part of the job, she whispered, voice ragged. They flew on into sunrise. And inside her something changed. She had led. She had faced betrayal, abandonment, death. And she had brought someone back. It weighed her hollow and filled her at once. When the Eagle 1 base appeared on the horizon, Delta extraction zone, she leaned forward, heart thudding. Rescue crews, medical teams, lights. She breathed again, for the first time in days. A medic helped Huxley off the litter. Maya stepped down beside him. Both limping, both bruised beyond measure, both alive. Someone pressed a blanket into her shoulder. Someone else asked her to report. She looked back toward the desert she had crossed. She thought of Vargas, of the men who'd left her for dead. She thought of Lena, of home, of everything she'd held onto in the dark. But here, in the hush between war and recovery, she said nothing. She just stood. And as the sun climbed higher, she whispered a vow the wind carried away. They left her to die. She returned carrying their failure. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. They told her she was safe now, but what do you tell a soldier who no longer believes in safety? The base hospital smelled of antiseptic and burnt coffee. Monitors hummed softly, an artificial heartbeat that filled the silence. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, IV still taped to her wrist, eyes tracing the cracks in the ceiling like they might form a map back to the desert. 3 days had passed since extraction. 3 days of debriefings, medical exams, and restless nights filled with the same dream, sand, laughter, and the taste of dust. They said she was lucky. She didn't feel lucky. Across the ward, Huxley slept under a pale blanket. His pulse monitor blinked steady green, proof of life, proof of purpose. Every time she looked at that light, her chest tightened. She'd saved him. But part of her was still out there under that sun, kneeling in the silence. At 600, the door opened. Colonel Gaines stepped in, broad shoulders, desert tan, eyes too sharp for comfort. "Raven," he said. She stood automatically. "At ease," he added, waving her down. He studied her for a long moment. "You understand how close that was?" "Yes, sir." "You understand we can't file the full report, not yet." She said nothing. He sighed. "There are politics in play, cross-border jurisdiction, intelligence leaks. You know how this goes." "I do." He nodded slowly. "You'll get a commendation, quiet one, internal citation." He paused. "But the public won't know what you did out there." Her gaze didn't waver. "They don't need to." Gaines exhaled through his nose, studying her. "You're one of the few who mean that." He turned to leave, then hesitated. "One more thing. Vargas, the lieutenant who ordered your execution. We've got a lead. Locals spotted him moving north. We're tracking." She said nothing. He waited, maybe expecting anger, closure, something. But she just stared at her hands. Finally he said quietly, "You did good work, Maya. Rest while you can." The door shut behind him. When the silence returned, she unclipped the IV and stood. The room swayed, a dizzy spin of white walls and sterile light. She braced herself on the bedpost, breath slow. Her reflection in the mirror startled her. Not from scars, from stillness. The kind that settles in soldiers after the noise ends. She touched her face. It didn't feel like hers. Later outside, the base air was cooler. Morning haze rolled across the tarmac. The desert lay beyond the fence, endless, golden, patient. Huxley found her sitting on a bench near the hangars. His arm was in a sling, his face patched but smiling. "You shouldn't be up," he said. She looked at him. "Neither should you." He chuckled softly. "Fair." They sat in silence for a while. Helicopters lined the runway, black silhouettes against a rising sun. "Do you ever wonder," he said quietly, "why we do it, go back again and again?" She stared at the horizon. "Because if we don't, someone else dies." He nodded, thinking. "You could have left me." "I know. But you didn't." She met his eyes. "That's not who we are." He smiled faintly. "You really believe that?" "I have to." That night sleep didn't come easy. Every time she closed her eyes, the desert returned, heat pressing into her skin, laughter echoing, the sight of the bottles lying just out of reach. She survived. But surviving and coming home weren't the same thing. At 200 she got up, dressed, and walked out into the desert beyond the base fence. No guard stopped her. Maybe they knew she needed space. The stars were brutal in their clarity. She sat on a dune and let the cold bite her hands. For a long time she didn't think, she just listened. Somewhere far away, an owl called. Somewhere closer, her heartbeat matched the rhythm of the wind. Finally she whispered, "You took everything from me, but not enough." The desert said nothing. It didn't have to. The next morning, she walked into the command tent uninvited. Gaines looked up surprised. "Raven." "I want in," she said. "On what?" "Vargas, you said he's moving north." He studied her face. "Maya, that's not your assignment anymore. You've done enough. I'm the one he left out there." "And you're the one who survived," he replied evenly. "Don't turn that victory into obsession." "It's not obsession," she said. "It's closure." He folded his hands. "We both know closure doesn't exist. You of all people should know that." She didn't blink. For a moment neither spoke. Finally he sighed. "We're running an limited strike team. If I bring you in, it's unofficial. No backup, no name, no report." "Then that's the kind I want." He stared at her, then nodded slowly. "You leave at 400, gear up." The mission brief was simple. Vargas had fled across the border with 3 men, 1 vehicle, and a stash of stolen intel. Objective: intercept, recover, eliminate if necessary. But for Maya, the objective was personal. She checked her weapon twice, her knife once. When she tightened her gloves, her hands stopped shaking. Huxley found her at the armory door. "You're going after him, aren't you?" She didn't deny it. "Then I'm coming." "You're not ready." "Neither are you," he said quietly. She looked at him for a long time, then handed him a spare mag. "Don't slow me down." They crossed the desert in a silent convoy, 2 matte black SUVs hugging the dunes. The world was colorless, the horizon endless. When they stopped, it was still dark. Gaines' voice came over the comm. "Target convoy approaching. Wait for visual." Through the scope, Maya saw headlights shimmer faintly across the basin. She felt her pulse slow. No excitement, just focus. Huxley whispered, "You sure you want to see him again?" "Yes." "What if he begs?" She didn't answer. The trucks rolled into view, 3 of them, same formation, same arrogance. When the lead vehicle passed the marked stone, Maya gave the signal. Flash, smoke, silence. Engines died, voices shouted. Her team moved like shadows. In less than 30 seconds, 2 of the vehicles were disabled. Only 1 figure crawled free, Vargas. He stumbled, coughing, sand streaking his face. He reached for his weapon, found none. When he looked up, Maya was already standing there. His expression flickered, shock, disbelief, fear. "You," he gasped. "You were supposed to." "Die," she finished. "I know." He took a step back. "It wasn't personal." "It never is," she said. He looked at her, searching for something, maybe mercy. But she didn't move. "You don't have to do this," he said. "We can make a deal." She raised her weapon, not out of anger but finality. "For Huxley," she said quietly, "for the ones who didn't make it back." He opened his mouth, then stopped. The desert absorbed the sound of the single shot. No echo, no celebration, just stillness. Later, as the team exfiltrated, Huxley glanced at her. "You could have let him live," he said. She kept her eyes on the horizon. He already was dead, the moment he forgot what humanity meant. He didn't argue. The wind rose, sweeping dust across the tracks. Within minutes, the footprints were gone, as though none of it had ever happened. Back at base, Gaines met her on the landing pad. "You did it," he said. She nodded once. He studied her face. "You don't look relieved." She looked past him toward the dunes. "I just buried something out there, sir. but I'm not sure it was him." He understood, said nothing. That night Maya stood alone by the perimeter fence, the wind tugging at her hair. The stars above her were the same ones that had guided her back from death. She breathed them in, slow and steady. This time there was no rage, no fear, only quiet. She finally realized something her father had tried to teach her long ago. Survival wasn't about fighting death. It was about remembering why you wanted to live. She smiled faintly, almost at peace. The desert stretched endlessly beyond her, vast and indifferent, but she no longer feared it, because now she carried its silence inside her. And when the wind shifted, carrying the faint echo of rotors far away, she whispered to the horizon, "You left me to die, but I learned to live without needing your permission." The desert didn't answer. It didn't need to. Some truths belong to silence. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. What happens when the mission ends, but the battlefield follows you home? The air smelled different. Not of diesel, not of dust, not of gun oil, but of rain. The plane touched down in San Antonio just after dawn, and for the first time in months, the horizon wasn't burning. Maya watched the tarmac blur pass through the window. Inside the cabin, soldiers clapped lightly as the wheels kissed the ground, a ritual cheer, automatic, hollow. She didn't join in. She died and come back under a desert sun. Now she was landing in a world that hadn't noticed. The terminal was bright, full of chatter. Families waiting, children waving flags. She walked through them in uniform, head high, smile faint but polite. To them she looked whole. To her she was still half buried under sand. Outside the sky hung low with clouds, heavy, soft, merciful. She breathed in the damp air, felt it settle against her skin like forgiveness she didn't deserve. A car waited, government issue. The driver nodded, "Welcome home, Sergeant Torres." She only nodded back. The apartment they'd assigned her was quiet. Too quiet. No hum of generators, no radio static, no heartbeat of comrades nearby. Just walls, white still, suffocating. She unpacked what little she had, a duffel, her father's dog tags, a single photograph of Lena. Then she sat on the couch and stared at her hands. No tremor, no visible scars. Just hands that had done what duty demanded and still didn't feel clean. Lena came by that evening. Smaller than Maya remembered, eyes softer, voice cautious. When she saw her sister, she froze. Then she hugged her so hard Maya almost lost balance. "You're thinner," Lena said, stepping back. "Are you eating?" Maya smiled faintly, "Sometimes." They sat together, coffee between them, silence hanging like a weight. Finally Lena asked, "Did you find him, the one who—" Maya cut her off gently, "It's done." Lena hesitated, "And you, are you done?" Maya looked away. There were no words for the kind of exhaustion she carried, the kind that didn't rest in the body, but in the soul. "I'm home," she said softly, "that's enough for now." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure it was true. Days bled into each other. Morning runs, blank afternoons, nightmares that woke her sweating. She'd walk to the edge of the city sometimes, where desert began again, as if drawn back to the place that tried to kill her. There she'd watch the horizon shimmer and think, "It's waiting." The VA therapist spoke gently, like walking on glass. "Survivor's guilt is common," he said. "It's not guilt," she replied, "it's memory." He wrote something down, nodding as if he understood. He didn't. How could he? He'd never felt a rifle stock warm under desert sun, never counted breaths in the dark while praying silence would keep a man alive. One evening she attended a veterans' dinner, at Huxley's insistence. He was recovering well, arm in a brace, smile easy. "Good food," he said. "Good people, you should come." So she did. Inside, laughter and music filled the hall. Old uniforms, new faces. Stories told too loudly to hide the tremor underneath. Someone raised a glass to heroes who made it home. Maya smiled because everyone else did. But when they sang the anthem, her eyes drifted. She wasn't picturing flags or parades. She was picturing sand dunes, endless and silent, the only witness that had truly seen her fight. Huxley noticed. "You still there?" he asked quietly. "Always," she said. After dinner, they walked outside. City lights blinked against a navy sky. Huxley lit a cigarette, handed her one. She didn't smoke but took it anyway, just to hold something real. "You ever think we're ghosts?" he asked. She looked at him. "What do you mean?" "Everyone treats us like we came back, but maybe part of us didn't." She stared at the ember glowing between his fingers. "I think the part that didn't was the one that believed life was simple." He nodded slowly. "You still planning to re-enlist?" She hesitated. "I don't know. I keep telling myself I'm done, but but the quiet feels louder than gunfire." They stood in silence, smoke curling upward like prayers without words. Weeks later, she visited her father's grave. The wind carried dust across the stones, warm and familiar. She knelt, brushing sand off the engraved name. "Hey, Dad," she whispered, "I made it back." The words caught in her throat. "I did everything you taught me. I survived, but—" Her voice broke. She took a long breath. "You said the desert teaches patience. You didn't say it keeps part of you." She smiled through tears. "You'd probably tell me that's the price." A gust of wind brushed against her cheek, cool, almost kind. She closed her eyes, letting it pass through her fingers. "I'm trying," she whispered, "to live, not just exist." On the way back, she stopped at a diner. Ordinary people filled the booths, truckers, families, kids coloring on napkins. The sound of laughter felt foreign. She sat at the counter, ordered coffee. When the waitress brought it, she asked, "Long day?" Maya smiled faintly. "Long few years." The waitress chuckled, "Aren't they all?" Maya stirred the cup. The steam rose and disappeared like breath on a cold night. For the first time in months, she felt something almost peaceful in that ordinariness. She didn't need to explain who she was or what she'd done. She could just sit, silent, alive. That was enough. Later that night, she walked home in the rain. The city lights blurred into reflections on wet asphalt. Every droplet cooled the heat that had lived inside her since that day in the desert. She stopped under a streetlight, face tilted to the sky. And she remembered the bottles, the laughter, the silence. But this time, it didn't feel like pain. It felt like proof. Proof that she'd endured what others couldn't. Proof that she'd turned cruelty into resilience. Proof that she was still here. At home, she dried her hair, set her weapon on the table, and opened her notebook. The first blank page stared back at her. She wrote one sentence. "I was left to die, and I chose to live." Then she closed the notebook, exhaled, and for the first time, allowed herself to rest, not because the war was over, but because she'd finally accepted that survival wasn't weakness. It was grace. As the rain eased and dawn crept through the window, she whispered into the quiet, "I'm still here, Dad, I'm still here." And somewhere far beyond the city, the desert wind carried her words soft, steady, unbroken. They thought she was done, but sometimes the ones who survive don't fade, they return to teach others how to endure. 6 months passed before the call came. Maya was in her small apartment, tending to silence, coffee half drunk, news murmuring in the background when the phone buzzed across the table. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. But something, a pulse, an instinct told her to answer. "Staff Sergeant Torres." Her spine straightened. The voice was male, calm, official. This is Lieutenant Commander Rains, Delta Training Command. We're reactivating former instructors for resilience training. Heard your name from Colonel Gaines." She said nothing. "We're not asking you to deploy," he continued. "Just to teach. Few weeks at Bragg. We need someone who understands what surviving really means." Maya looked at the cooling coffee in her hand. A soft smile ghosted her lips. "Send the orders," she said. Fort Bragg was colder than she remembered. Pine trees lined the perimeter, frost crisp on the field grass. Cadets ran obstacle courses in early light, shouting cadence that faded into breathless laughter. To them, war was still a theory, a story told by the old and scarred. She stood at the edge of the range, arms crossed, hair tied back, the morning sun glinting off the small delta pin still clipped to her sleeve. "Raven," a voice called. She turned Gaines. Older, wearier, but smiling. "You look human," he said. "I'm trying something new," she replied. He laughed quietly. "These kids think survival's about toughness. Maybe you'll show them it's about something deeper." She raised an eyebrow. "Hope." He shook his head. "Endurance." Her first day in the classroom, 20 pairs of eyes watched her like she was part myth, part ghost. She said nothing for a full 10 seconds, just let the silence build. Then she spoke. "You've been told combat is chaos. It's not." She paused. "It's routine. It's repetition. It's knowing what to do after the chaos stops." The cadets shifted in their seats. She walked slowly between rows. "You'll be tested. Physically, mentally, emotionally. You'll think breaking is failure." She stopped and faced them. "It's not. Breaking is the moment before you rebuild into something unshakable." One cadet raised his hand. "Ma'am, what about fear?" Maya studied him for a moment. "Fear isn't the enemy," she said. "It's the signal that you still have something to lose." She let the words sink in. Then added quietly, "The day you stop feeling fear is the day you stop being human. And if you stop being human, you stop being worth saving." Silence followed, deep, respectful, heavy. After class, she walked the training yard. The air was sharp with pine and gun oil. A faint smile tugged at her mouth. Teaching felt strange, like holding a mirror to her old self and realizing she no longer recognized the reflection. She stopped near the obstacle wall, watching a young woman struggling halfway up. Boots slipped, hands trembled, she cursed under her breath. Maya stepped forward. "What's your name, cadet?" "Reese, ma'am." "Reese," she said softly, "you're thinking about falling." Reese frowned. "I'm thinking about finishing." Maya shook her head. "No, you're thinking about falling, that's why you're still here." The cadet hesitated, then tried again, this time focusing on her next grip, not the ground below. She reached the top. When she jumped down, breathless and wide-eyed, Maya said only, "See. The mind gives up before the body ever does." Reese nodded, still catching her breath. "You really believe that?" Maya looked toward the horizon. "It kept me alive." Days turned into weeks. She taught navigation, psychological endurance, silence, discipline, the unglamorous skills no one brags about. The cadets began calling her ghost instructor, because she never raised her voice, never flinched, and somehow always appeared right when someone's resolve started to crack. She didn't correct them. She liked the name. But at night, when the barracks lights went out and the world grew quiet again, her ghosts returned. The desert, the laughter, the man she'd left buried beneath sand. She'd stare out the window at the pine shadows and wonder if endurance ever really ends, or if it just changes shape. One night, Reese found her sitting alone by the range. "Couldn't sleep," Reese said. "Mind won't shut off." Maya didn't look up. "You'll learn to live with it." Reese sat beside her. "How do you stop seeing it?" "Seeing what?" "The things that went wrong." Maya turned, met her gaze. You don't. You just learn to live so they don't own you. Reese hesitated, then asked softly, was it like that for you? Maya looked at the horizon, at nothing and everything. They left me to die in the desert, she said. I walked 80 kilometers without water. I buried people I couldn't save. And somehow I'm still here. But some nights. She trailed off, eyes distant. I still feel the sand under my skin. Reese didn't speak. She just nodded, a gesture of quiet understanding. After a while, Maya stood. Get some rest, cadet. Tomorrow's a long day. But as she walked back toward her quarters, she realized maybe the lesson wasn't for Reese. Maybe it was for herself. The final training exercise arrived sooner than expected. A 48-hour survival drill deep in Carolina woodlands. Rain, mud, hunger, fatigue. Exactly the kind of test that stripped away bravado and left only truth. Maya oversaw from the command post, but as hours dragged on, something pulled her closer, an old instinct to be in the dirt again, to feel the heartbeat of struggle. She hiked out into the woods near midnight, alone. Rain fell in sheets, turning the world into silver ghosts. She found the cadets huddled under makeshift shelters, soaked and shivering. They looked up as she approached. One said, "Ma'am, we lost bearings in the storm." She nodded, "Then find them again." "How?" Reese asked, voice trembling. Maya knelt beside her, pointing to a faint glimmer through the clouds. "See that, Polaris, faint but steady. As long as it's there, you're never lost." Reese followed her gaze, nodded. "What if it disappears?" "Then remember where it was," Maya said, "and keep walking." By dawn, the rain eased. Mist clung to the trees like breath. The cadets stumbled back toward base, tired, muddy, changed. Maya walked behind them, quiet pride in her chest. They learned what mattered. Not how to fight, but how to endure, to adapt, to keep moving through uncertainty. At the debrief, Commander Rains said, "You did well, Raven. Your cadets scored higher in cohesion than any class we've had in years." Maya nodded. "They learned to trust pain." He smiled faintly. "You ever think of staying, permanent instructor role?" She looked out the window, the rising sun washing gold through the fog. "No," she said. "I think I was meant to pass through, not stay." He nodded. "Then what's next?" She thought for a long moment before answering. "Peace," she said softly, "if I can find it." That night she packed quietly. Her badge, her father's tags, the small Delta pin. When she zipped her bag, Reese knocked on the door. "I heard you're leaving," Reese said. "I am." Reese shifted awkwardly. "Before you go, I wanted to say thanks." "For what?" "For teaching us that survival isn't about strength. It's about remembering who you are when strength runs out." Maya smiled, small, real. "You'll be fine, Reese. Just don't mistake silence for weakness." Reese nodded. "I won't." As the door closed behind her, Maya felt something she hadn't in a long time, pride that didn't hurt. At dawn, she stood at the gate, watching the mist lift over the trees. The air was clean, the earth smelled alive. She whispered to herself, "You made it out, Raven, you made it through." But as the wind moved through the pines, it carried an echo, soft, steady, almost like her father's voice again. "The desert doesn't end, kid. It just changes names." She smiled. "I know, Dad." Then she slung her pack over her shoulder and started walking, not toward battle, not toward glory, but toward whatever waited next. They said every war ends, but for some, the battle just changes shape. Maya didn't plan on going back. After Fort Bragg, she disappeared into quiet places, the kind that never make the news. A cabin near Flagstaff, no neighbors, no noise, just wind, pine, and the slow patience of time. She worked with her hands, fixed fences, rebuilt engines, cooked over fire. There was peace in small things, the ones you never notice until war strips everything else away. Sometimes she'd drive down to the local town, buy supplies, drink coffee with the old ranchers who never asked questions. They called her ma'am, and that was enough. To them, she was just another veteran learning how to live again. They didn't know she once crossed 80 kilometers of hell with no water. They didn't need to. One afternoon, a pickup truck rolled up the dirt road, black government plates, quiet engine, purpose in every turn of the wheels. She didn't have to see the badge to know who it was. When the door opened, Colonel Gaines stepped out. Older now, grayer, but the same weary steadiness in his eyes. "You're hard to find," he said. "I wasn't hiding," she replied, "just done." He looked around at the quiet landscape. "You really believe anyone like us ever gets to be done?" She gave a tired smile, trying to. He nodded once, then handed her a folder. Inside photos, a village, burned trucks, satellite overlays. She closed it slowly. "Cartel." "Not this time," he said. "Something else. A joint tasking with state, small team, no flag. They want a liaison who knows desert ops and has experience under isolation stress." She stared at him. "You mean someone who already died once?" He didn't deny it. "This isn't about revenge, Maya. It's about saving people. A convoy went dark last week. Humanitarian medics, 2 civilians. We think they're alive, but we're late." She looked back at her cabin, the unfinished fence, the quiet firewood stack, the promise of peace. Then at the photos. "Why me?" Gaines smiled faintly. "Because when everyone else sees death, you see direction." The mission was simple. Find the lost convoy, extract survivors, no engagement unless necessary. She packed light, compass, knife, medkit, rifle. No medals, no flag. Before she left, she wrote a short note and pinned it to her cabin door. "If I don't come back, don't look for me. I've already been found once." Then she drove out alone. The desert was different this time. Wilder, unmapped. But she knew how to listen. By day 2, she found the first sign, a burned-out Jeep, doors riddled with holes. The tracks led northeast, into canyons that cut like scars through the land. She moved quietly, every step a conversation with the earth. The wind whispered through stone. Her shadow stretched long beside her. And somewhere deep inside, she felt it, that familiar hum, the old pulse that had kept her alive before. It wasn't fear. It was focus. By the third night, she reached them. A makeshift camp, half-collapsed tents, smoke curling weakly. 4 people, 2 wounded, 1 unconscious, 1 barely standing guard with a pistol and empty magazine. When they saw her emerge from the dark, they froze. "You military?" the guard asked, voice hoarse. "Something like that," she said. He exhaled hard. "We thought we were dead." "Not yet," she said, kneeling beside him. "Where's your radio?" "Busted. We tried signaling flares, but—" She looked at the sky. "Storm last night. Wind killed your smoke." She checked the wounded, dehydration, infection, shock. Nothing she hadn't seen before. "We can move," she said, slow but steady. The guard hesitated. "You came alone." Maya met his eyes. "You only need one person who refuses to quit." They started walking before dawn. The wounded leaned on each other. The silence stretched, heavy but alive. When the sun rose, she led them into the shadow of a ridge. She rationed water, tore strips from her scarf for bandages, kept them moving. Hours passed. The heat grew brutal again, just like before. One medic stumbled. Maya caught her, steadied her gently. "You keep your head up," she said softly. "That's how it starts. You let it drop, the desert takes you." The medic looked at her, tears mixing with sweat. "How are you still doing this?" Maya smiled faintly. "Practice." By afternoon, they reached the extraction zone, or what should have been. The coordinates matched. The sky was empty. No dust, no engines, no rescue. She keyed the small radio strapped to her vest. Raven to Falcon. Extraction point secure. Request confirmation. Static. She tried again. Nothing. The medic began to cry quietly. The guard cursed under his breath. Maya stood still, eyes scanning the horizon. This was the same story, written in different sand. She could almost hear her father again. The desert doesn't kill you fast, kid. It waits to see if you'll break first. She knelt, drew a circle in the dirt, and said quietly, "Then we wait, but we do it my way." She handed out remaining water, marked perimeter arcs with rocks, used her compass to gauge wind direction. Then she sat down beside them, calm as stone. Hours later, the first drone hum reached her ears. Faint, distant. She looked up. A small black dot grew against the burning sky. Her radio crackled. "Raven, this is Falcon. Visual on your signal, we've got you." She exhaled just once. Then smiled. "Copy that, Falcon, we're still here." The rescue came fast, 2 ospreys kicking up waves of sand. When the medics were loaded and lifted, she stayed behind for a moment, watching the desert wind swallow their footprints. The pilot called down through the radio, "Raven, you coming?" She looked once more at the horizon, that endless golden silence that had nearly claimed her, taught her, and finally redeemed her. "Yeah," she said softly, "I'm coming." She climbed aboard. At altitude, she sat by the window, eyes on the fatting dunes. Below her, the desert looked almost peaceful, a sea of memory and mercy. The young medic across from her whispered, "You saved us." Maya shook her head gently. "You saved yourself. I just reminded you how." The medic frowned. "How do you do that? Keep calm when everything falls apart?" Maya looked out the window. The sun broke through the clouds, a brilliant, burning line. "You stop fighting the desert," she said softly, "and you start listening to it." Back at base, Gaines met her on the tarmac. He didn't speak at first, just looked at her with something between pride and apology. "You keep proving the rule wrong," he said finally. "What rule? That no one survives the desert twice." She smiled faintly. "Guess I didn't get the memo." He handed her a small folder. No medal, no ceremony, just a single citation stamped classified. She looked at it, then tucked it away without opening it. "Paper doesn't mean much," she said. He nodded. "So what does?" She looked at the horizon, where sky met dust, where silence met memory. Doing right, even when no one's watching. That night, alone again, she sat outside her cabin. The stars were endless, the wind gentle. Her rifle leaned against the wall, untouched. She poured coffee into a tin cup and stared at the flames. No flashbacks. No nightmares. Just peace, quiet and earned. In her lap lay her old watchband, the one with etched escape coordinates from long ago. She traced them with her thumb, smiling. The symbols were fading, the memories weren't. She whispered into the dark, her voice steady, almost tender. "You left me to die in the desert, but the desert didn't finish me. It forged me." A long silence followed, the kind that doesn't ask for answers. Then she added softly, "And if anyone asks what survival really means, tell them it's not about winning. It's about remembering why you fight to begin with." The fire crackled, casting her face in shifting amber light. Her eyes closed. Her breathing slowed. And for the first time, truly, she rested. Not as Raven. Not as soldier. Just as Maya Torres, a woman who had faced the void and learned to outlast it. Voice fades, final narration. They left her to die in the desert, but the desert never stood a chance. Because survival isn't noise or pride or rage. It's the quiet choice to rise again and again when no one's watching. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.